Hello everybody, this is Jughead, and welcome to the show. I am so very happy that you are here, and I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation between me and Chris Wollard. We had never met before. I think I may have, on Even in Blackouts tour, I think we may have passed cross. We may have crossed paths, but I don't think we ever officially met. But I feel like we started talking as if we had been friends for a long time. It so often happens with me in these interviews, and I really love doing this, and I hope you enjoy following it. I'm not going to get into the Patreon stuff, but if you have time, go to www.jugheadsbasementpodcast.com and follow that link to the Patreon, and you can get free shit in the mail, and you can help out the show. You can also, write reviews at Apple Music, or you can share the podcast. But I really want to dedicate most of this time before the interview with talking about the project that brought Chris to me. This is a Naked Raygun tribute album called Godspeed, a tribute to Pierre Kezdy, and I'm going to read you part of the one sheet I got from Kate. Put It Here Production and Big Minnow Records have joined forces to help continue the legacy of trailblazers Naked Raygun and their bassist, the late Pierre Kezdy, who sadly passed away from cancer in October of 2020. The tribute album consists of cover songs from artists who not only love Naked Raygun, but were also influenced by them. Hot Water Music, Face to Face, Swinging Utters, Jay Robbins from Jawbox, Josh Caterer from Smoking Popes, The Boll Weevils, The Methadones, Pegboy, The Broke Downs, The Usuals, Grey Trash Aliens, Death in Memphis, The Turtles, and Stress Dreams. They all recorded one of their favorite songs, paying homage to the band and a legend gone too soon. Last thing I'll say is Godspeed, a tribute to Pierre Kezdy, will be released digitally and on vinyl on Friday, July 28th. That might be in the future for some of you and in the past for others. I should have a link in the show notes. That's in 2023, and 100% of profits from record sales will be donated directly to the Kezdy family to honor Pierre's legacy and inspiration that he gave to the world of punk music. I'm very happy to support that. And also, before the interview begins, I also want to say I'm happy to have, as a sponsor, HelloFresh. They have helped out my sister in a great way. My sister is a single mother, and I was able to get her a sampling of HelloFresh food delivered right to her, and I have a little thing to say about that in the middle of the show. But in the meantime, here is Chris and his band Hot Water Music. Right now, you're listening to Collect Your Things and Run by Hot Water Music off the record Feel the Void, released in 2022. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jughead's Basement, subcategory Lo-Fi Interviews with Hi-Fi Guests, episode 175 with Chris Wollard of Hot Water Music, The Ship Thieves, and The Draft. He talks to us about looking at the self, guitar talk, and Chris's first guitar is still his main guitar, art process, and a discussion about discovery and creativity, the influence and effect of Naked Raygun on Hot Water Music, playing your heart out when no one is there, or nobody wants you there, Chris's real-world relationship with Naked Raygun and Jeff Pazzotti, and his band's participation on Godspeed, a tribute to Pierre Kezdy. Plus, much hot moon-setting darkness now, more. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. Wow, you're like a silhouette. You're a
Yeah,
shadow.
I'm gonna change that one. It's sunny here in Florida, you know.
That's right. You're on evening. I'm on morning right now.
I mean, the moon's right there. It'll be getting dark soon.
We're in our rain season here.
Where are you?
Osaka, Japan.
And what do you live there?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah. I live, I have a house in Chicago too, but I live here during the work season.
That's cool. I've been to Osaka.
Yeah, it's my favorite city in Japan. It's a sister city to Chicago, so it makes sense that I like it because it's like a foodie, blue collar sort of town.
That's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
vibe I got. I'm trying to hide. There we go. I'm trying to hide self view so I can just see you.
It's hard to look at the self all the time.
Evidently, I haven't turned this thing on in a while because it needed updates and all this shit.
We're already recording, so that's the way I roll here.
Excellent.
Yeah. And the focus obviously is from Kate got us together for the naked Raygun thing, but I for my show I like to do a little bit more of a I it's not just an advertisement for something, so I just wanted to try to expand it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm not. There's no way in hell I'm going to cover your whole career because your career is long as mine.
Yeah. You know, what I figure is the best interviews are the ones that whatever the schedule was is you know
Yeah.
we just get talking and
Yeah,
have
that's
some
that's good to know. That's how I run these two. I do a lot of studying and then I just I let it sort of sit over the interview. But it's to me it's more of a conversation. So if you have questions for me, it's a back and forth in that way. But
yeah.
I did come up with a bit of a figure and of because looking through all the projects you've been in, I've kind of created a other bands involved with your band type of feel, like when whether it's you working with Bad Religion.
The family tree is huge. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of family trees, are you into that idea of family trees of bands? Like, do you follow those chains of like if someone's in a band, do you follow the other things that they've been in?
Well, yeah. Yeah, right. Because I'm gonna get into a band, could be for any number of reasons, but there's probably gonna be somebody in the band that I attach myself to. It might not be the guy that does my job, right? It might be the drummer, where I'm like just very interested in what he does. It could be the bass player, but a lot of that would also depend on what kind of music I'm listening to. You know, I mean, I'm a guitarist in a rock and roll band. I'm guessing people probably think that that's mostly what I listen to, but and I do. That's how I grew up playing rock and roll and punk rock. But I listen to a lot of music where guitar is not the forefront. In reggae, you're following the bass and drums and vocals. The guitar is more of a rhythm section part. Or jazz, the guitar is just an accompaniment. It might be a singer, right? It might be I love your lyrics. It might be I love your voice. Frankie Stubbs, I love his lyrics from Leatherface, right? Julianne Hatfield, I love her voice, right? I'll follow both of them, but for different reasons. So I mean, you meet a lot of players on tour, and you just become a big fan. You get to watch some amazing players on a nightly basis, and you get to watch their shows change, and you get this different kind of relationship where you're both really working as it is, like in the moment.
I've always been a guitarist too, and that's where touring helped me with my fascination with bass player. Like I love having bass players on here because I don't understand that mind myself. It's not me, but it's such an important part of once you really start understanding what a bass player does. So I always ask them if they're a born bass player or if they've
It's a
just
half of the rhythm section.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I love talking about bass players when they realized, when they were self-taught that, oh my God, I'm following the drums. That's kind of when he's kicking,
Yeah,
I'm doing something when he's,
yeah,
beats.
yeah, yeah. You're playing with the drummer, and the drummer's playing with the bass player, and you're making music and counter rhythms underneath the story being told or the picture being painted or whatnot.
The two great bass players that I knew from early punk scene that really cemented that for me was Matt Freeman from Operation Ivy at the time, and
Of course.
Justin from Moral Crux. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but that man's amazing.
Yeah, I know Moral Crux. Well, I don't know them personally.
We actually put out Panic Button Records. We put out a couple of their records too. But,
okay. Yeah.
But
they're awesome. For me, I grew up as a guitar player. I was 7 or something when I got my first acoustic. You know, it's strange what they do to students, like little kids. They give them these tiny, well, it wasn't tiny, but it was short scale. But they made, even as an adult, that son of a bitch would have been hard to play now. Right?
My first two was really difficult to play. Right? I still have
like
it.
The strings are like that far up, right?
Yeah.
And you're expecting like a child to play this? Makes no sense. And then I got my first electric when I was 10.
You remember your first guitar?
Well, yeah, I still have it. It's still my main guitar.
Oh, really? Yeah, wow.
Yeah, my number one, my absolute number one. My Sunburst 1979 Les Paul Custom.
Wow. Yeah, mine was a Hondo. You know, those remakes of of like a Strat Hondo.
For me, though, I was really young, and I still lived in Flint, Michigan, which was like a factory town. Like my dad was kind of always a hustler. You know, he came out of the Navy, and I don't know if he ever had another job. Like he would just, you know, build a house, sell it, build a bar, run it, then sell it. You know, buy some old antiques, sell them. You know, we got into antique boats, gas pump globes, motorcycles. You know, when he passed, we probably had 100 motorcycles that were, I mean, the newest one was probably 1958. And so when my guitar teacher, you know, this was in the 80s, mid 80s, I started seeing like the stuff, you know, on MTV or whatever, which was lots of shredding, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? Yngwie Malmsteen.
Well, I mean, in Flint, we didn't know about anybody Malmsteen.
Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen.
Everybody knew about Van Halen and Aerosmith and Metallica, I guess later. So people knew about shredding. And I was really young, like I said, and I told my teacher, Bruce Winch, he had this little tiny shop called Flint Guitar. And he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do this. And he said, no. He said, no. He said, I'm going to teach you like rock and roll. And so he taught me like kind of roots stuff, you know, some blues, some Muddy Waters, right? Rolling Stones, you know, just kind of 60s rock, you know, maybe some 50s stuff, some blues or whatever. And you know, and later on, maybe a little Cheap Trick, right?
Wow, yeah.
But none of this, like, right? Like, I just never got taught that way. I don't play that way.
Well, I don't think you can really become in my mind, you become like an actual songwriter if you just know how to rip. I mean,
yeah, but I was 9 or 10 years old. I wasn't going to be a songwriter.
Yeah, no, but I feel like that was a wise move from your teacher to.
Well, it was.
Teach you structure of songwriting before threading.
That's why he's the only guitar teacher that I ever had that I still remember his name.
Yeah.
He really did put me on my path. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So it got to the point where I needed, you know, I was using one of his electric guitars at the store to learn, but I needed something that didn't have action like that. To practice on. And man, we had even already moved out of Flint. We were probably a half hour outside of the city in the country, and he would come out to our house to teach because he just really took me under his shoulder as a kid. But he showed up and he had 2 different setups, and he was proposing this to me and also proposing it to my dad, who was obviously buying. But he had my 79 custom Sunburst, you know, traditional Sunburst red, cherry red Sunburst, you know. And then with that, there was this little Dean Markley amp.
Yeah, I know those. Yeah.
Seriously about this big.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it had a button that you pushed for distortion. And then the other option was a really beautiful white Fender Strat and a really nice, I remember it being a silver face. It wasn't a twin. What would it have been? I don't know, a Princeton, something like a 112 Fender amp. They were both the same price. Option 1 and option 2 were the same price.
So you had to take that amp with that guitar and that guitar with that amp?
But it was $700
okay.
for option A or option B. So a 1979 Les Paul Custom with a tiny, the worst practice amp you've ever seen, or a really nice American Strat with a really nice amp. So I was kind of blown away.
Yeah.
I was like, what's happening right now? Right. And so, Bruce, he said, so which one do you like? And I was, over the moon. Either one of these is a million times better than what I've been playing.
Right.
And so I just said, I'll be happy as a clam with with either one of these. Right. And so then my dad asked Bruce, he said, well, which one is the better investment? Because my dad always thought I'd get sick of playing guitar.
And he might have to resell it.
So he looked at it as an investment. And so he gave me, he bought that Les Paul. There's only one Hot Water album that Les Paul is not on. It's on every single thing, whether it's a solo or a rhythm track. That guitar is on everything we've ever done, except for the Existor record, because that was in Colorado at the blasting room.
Right.
I didn't want to fly it out. So I brought a Telecaster and I did that record on Telecaster. But
did it feel different? Did it put you in a different mind space to be using a different guitar, or was it just a guitar?
Oh yeah. But I do that anyway.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, I have a couple Telecasters. I have a couple Les Pauls, a couple old Melody Makers from the late 60s. I have a Pete Hilton at the house right now. I have a few guitars from friends of mine because I'm writing right now. So I have an ES 335, a 1983 335. I have a 69 SG. I have an 81 Les Paul. I really do believe that different guitars pull different things out of you.
Mm.
I don't like to always play on the same guitar. I have a Martin acoustic upstairs that I like to write with, but I will play differently. I might do more arpeggiated chord patterns, or if I have a humbucker, I might play a little bit more where you get this right arm going.
Yeah.
When I'm playing my Telecaster, I'll play it a little different. The different guitars resonate in different ways. I don't ever sit down and just start writing. I think that is a worthless waste of time. It's just, I'll never get anything from it. Right.
So that's what Jesse Michaels says too, that I just interviewed too. He talks a lot about that, the capriciousness of creativity, and then you can't write your best stuff when you just make yourself sit down. Hello, John in the future here, just interrupting shortly to say I misquote Jesse Michaels a bit here, but you can check it out in the episode 172. In that discussion with Jesse, he admits that he does like deadlines and being given assignments, which sounds like a contradiction to what I had spoke of just in this interview with Chris, but it's a more complicated issue than that. You should listen to that interview. I left it in because it led to this interesting conversation between creativity and discovery.
Well, okay. Well, you just said the word that I tend to disagree with.
Okay. What is that, capricious?
No, creativity.
Oh.
That, just because of the root word.
Create?
Yeah, it leads people to think that they're creating something. Now, you have some age behind you, I have some age behind me. it's not too daunting for me to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to try to create something, even though that's not how I think. But when I'm trying to help people learn how to play guitar, trying to get people to learn how to write a song and not be scared of the song, right? It's like when you sit down with a blank piece of paper and you're scared to write a bad line, you're putting yourself in this position where it's like fail or succeed, and I just don't think that's correct. I think the more honest way to think about it and to talk about it is it's really discovery, isn't it? It's not creation, it's discovery. We are playing on instruments that have a set scale length, set frets, right? We get these certain notes, right? If you go over into different parts of the world, whether it's Asia or, lots of different places, they're going to have notes in between these things. There's different ways they think about melodies. The instruments are built to do different things, right? A guitar is generally tuned to E. Trumpet is B flat. And we're set with these kind of instruments and tools that help us explore this stuff. But we're also working in 4/4 or 3/4 or 5/4 or 7/8 or whatever. I'm not inventing how to count to 7.
Well, I think creating is different than inventing.
What I'm more doing, to me, is like we start with, like, for instance, a lot of Hot Water, the music comes from, and it's not really by chance, it's George lives 10 blocks that way, and Jason also lives here in town. So the three of us get together a lot more than anybody else to do writing. And we will start with an idea. And that idea might be a rhythm, and that idea might be a chord progression. But we're going to take that thing, and I'm going to look at it from here. Jason's going to look at it from over there. George is going to flip it around to here. And we're all going to find different things that we like about it. And that's discovery. It's not that you're out at sea and you created an island to land on. It's that you're out at sea and you landed at a place and you guys get off the boat and you go walking around and you go, look what I found. Look what I found over here. You're looking at this same thing, but I'm seeing it from this other angle. Right. And so let's just try to discover how it is that the 3 or the 4 or the 5 of us see this thing. Let's present that. But I don't think it's creation. I don't think any of it's creation.
I think this is a really interesting difference in ways of thinking. And I think that probably adds to how you progress in music. But I still feel like a discovery. I really like the concept you're talking about. But I think, like, if you put a bunch of 5 other different guys together, they're not going to discover that same island. They're going to discover a different island.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's the beauty of it. Because, like, this is saying, like, if me and the ship thieves get off the boat and go walking around, these are the things we're going to find because these are the things we're interested in. And if me and the Hot Water guys get off the boat, we're going to find different things because those are the things that this group is interested in.
So, but you're saying discovery sort of implies that everything already exists.
Well, it does. All these melodies are just, this chord sounds good with this chord. And if you want to twist it this way, here's a way to look at it differently. Or if you want to go from 4/4 to 3/4 in the same verse and then back to 4/4 and 3/4, we can do that, but we're discovering what that means. We are not creating meter. Meter already exists.
Yeah, no, I'm all board on what you're saying, but since creativity is such a thing that I've studied for years, I'm more than willing to hear the different meaning of it. But I do feel like creativity is I call creativity as the combining of disparate images to create something that wasn't there before. And To me, those things already exist. It's not like I'm making up stuff that isn't there already. I think creativity is using the things that already exist to try to find different ways to put them together.
Yes, right. So I guess I try not to limit it to just how we talk about music. I think it should be also how we talk about art. We should be using some of these words and phrases a little better. If Monet and Picasso are in a band together, like they're both seeing it how they see it, and they both want to convey that. Okay. But surrealism and cubism and impressionism and realism, they're all different. But when you're talking about a band, you're talking about a band that at some point has to become this, right? And you have to find this way of talking to each other. And yes, you are using your creative impulses, right? And yes, you are trying to find what this song is you're working on, which is sort of creation, but it's also sort of discovery.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying. I mean, there's also I can't remember which main artist it was, but in the Renaissance period, there's lots of sculpture was one of the main industries, and that they always talked about discovering the body that's underneath the marble they're carving or something, that it already exists in there.
Exactly. And think about this. The people that were doing sculpture, they were working with depth, right? This is 3D. This is depth. The closer you are to me, the bigger it is, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, back then, when people were doing paintings, they still didn't have this way of like the people in the background were just as big as the people in the foreground.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
They hadn't quite discovered that perspective system, with the lines and the dots.
But the sculptors were.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of how I think, like a drummer talks different than a guitar player. You have to have that chemistry. You have to have that way of communicating.
I think what we're dabbling with is talking. Yeah, I don't even think we're in disagreement about it. I think more it seems like we're both talking about collaboration. I mean, because I deal with
collaboration.
Yeah, I was in a theater company. I wrote for theater too, so that's a big collaboration. Because my biggest discovery was being in a room writing by myself, and then realizing the real exciting part was once I brought it to the actors, and then they like redesigned it, for me and made me think differently about what I was writing.
I completely agree. When I was younger, when all of us were younger, we all had the same problem, which was, I guess you could call it like the Gollum disease, which was like, my precious.
Yeah.
This is mine. Meaning you show up to band practice with a song and you're telling the drummer what to do. You're telling everybody what to do instead of letting them discover it as well. And then after years and years of working together, you develop the respect to allow, which is fucked up to even say, but that's how it goes. It's like at the beginning, you go, I'm not going to allow you to touch my baby. But you get to a point and you go, I'm so excited to hear what you'll do with my idea. Mm-hmm. Instead of, this is my idea and everybody has to do it. And that's where for us, that's where we kind of find where something is working or not. So we'll come in and we just play everybody's idea about everything. We'll doesn't matter. If anybody has an idea, we try it out. And what wins is the idea that makes the hair stand up on your neck. It doesn't matter if this started as your song. If somebody else brings a new discovery of, wow, what you're doing is really cool, but what if we shift it like this at this point? And then that's where it becomes this discovery thing of, I never would have thought to look there on this piece.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the, we could talk about how I know each band probably works a little bit different though, but once I love the idea of collaboration and playing together, but once the business starts dripping in and you're going to be showing to audiences and selling it, is there a point where the original creator gets credit, or is it always divided between everyone? You know what I'm asking? Like, is there a point where you all have to go, whose song is this really?
No. And look, normally I would probably tell you it's none of your business, right?
Yeah.
Just because that's how people our age communicate, right?
Well, I don't communicate that way, but
Well, I mean, I never ask anybody about their finance.
oh, I'm not asking about the money. I don't care about
Let me tell you, without talking about numbers.
No, I don't care about the numbers. I'm talking more about the process of moving something from art to financial. Yeah.
What I'll say about both Hot Water Always, Ship Thieves started as my own thing, and the guys joined the band later, right? So obviously that's going to be different. How we work is we all write. I don't want, so like for Hot Water, okay? Now we have 3 guitar players. There's Chris Cresswell. I have no interest in telling Chris Cresswell what to write. If he's in the building, I expect him to be working just like all of us. We all work on everything. We all talk about the drum parts, the bass parts, guitar parts, vocal parts, harmonies, arrangements, which songs we keep working on, which songs make the record. All of those are voted on. I get a vote. Everybody in the band gets a vote. That's 5. Brian McTurnan gets a vote, the producer. Ryan Williams gets a vote, the engineer. If we're having a real problem, once you get all those, what you want is an odd number of votes. I'll tell you that, right? Because
yeah.
you don't want to count, right?
Yeah.
Right? But I could be sitting there saying, "I love this song. This is my favorite song," but there might be 6 other people that are saying it just didn't come out as good as these others, and then you get outvoted, and it doesn't matter. So that's a democracy. We all also always have like a veto. If there's something that's bothering you personally, you can say, nope, and nobody will argue with you, okay? But here's the thing. We want everybody to show up. We want everybody to be contributing. We want everybody to be thinking about everything and working together. We split our money evenly. The band, the producer, the engineer, we all get the same amount of money. We just split it. And we say, hey, we're going to be all working here for a month or 6 weeks. I don't want to be working harder than you. I want to be working with you. I don't want you to be working harder than me. I want to be working with you. And so everybody's ideas are valid. Obviously, maybe the band members will have a better idea of certain aspects, okay? But we all work together. And honestly, I don't want to pay anybody to be there if they're not contributing.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the point? What would be the point of having somebody there and not feeling like we are all equal members? Like we are all working on the same project. We're trying to do a great record. And so we're all going to do our best. And whose ever idea gets us all the most excited, that's how we base it.
Right. So do you think, Chris, then one of the things I noticed, and actually having been in a band that's around for a long time, like Hot Water Music, there's also points where you've departed from each other. Does having those other side projects then help feed that? Because then you can feed your own egos and elsewhere and keep it a little bit more pure?
No, it's not about feeding egos. It's about you get interested in other music, or maybe, like, I guess I have to speak from my own position, but there's been times where I want to write a really pissed off record because I'm pissed off. And that's not necessarily what I want the band to do, but I'll still do that so that I can work through the song ideas I have, or maybe the lyrical ideas I have, or if I want to do the first solo record, something kind of more mellow, I can still keep exploring the things that I want to explore without it necessarily impacting the band. Or like I'd say for that first solo record, I guess that's a good example. That was stuff where I just kind of kept working on songs, and they were ending up the way they were ending up. That wasn't really what I wanted to go play shows doing, but this was the record I wanted to make. I didn't really want to go play shows. Like, I wasn't writing songs to get a crowd pumped up or anything. I just wanted to do some kind of more laid back recordings, and at that time, that was super weird. I recorded at 3 different home studios, and I would tell people, I'd say, look, I have the studio set up. I'll buy the booze and the snacks and the party favors, and we're just going to stay up all night and work on a song. And they say, what song? And I was like, well, I'll play it to you when you get here. And then we just hit record.
This is not a test of business as usual. Though it is casual, it's really up to you to go. 'Cause even at its best, it's better when it's mutual. But most things are like that, and this is no exception, no.
Now, that was just a different process that I really wanted to go through compared to what Hot Water was doing, which was all of these steps we're taking. There's money behind them. There's tours behind them. Everything's so serious. We have to nail this recording. The drums have to sound great, all this stuff. The vocals have got to be a great take. And at a certain point, I said, I really want to make a record and not think about that. I want to think about more like impressionism. I'm trying to convey a vibe, and I'm not necessarily worried about the snare drum sound. Like on that record, one of the songs, the snare drum sound was, I just put a stack of sheets of paper and I just hit it with a stick, and it just went psh, psh, psh. And I live in a house that was built in 1908, and it's just these old wood floors from over 100 years ago, and it's sitting on blocks above the ground. And so my kick drum sound was this.
Yeah, just hitting on the floor.
I just moved my foot around the floor until I found a spot that sounded like dead, and it was just doom, doom, doom. That was kind of just a response to all of a sudden music was so serious in my life that, it always makes me want to do another band on the side where it's just not that serious. It's more of a clubhouse vibe where we're just hanging out and we come up with what we come up with. And I kind of need that always in my life. I think that's why I've always been in 2 bands.
I think about it more with like, for instance, when I'm writing a book, because I wrote books, I don't read other books. Like, or if I'm working on songs, I tend to read books. Like I need 2 different influxes of things to write this.
Yes.
But the other thing I was going to get at is what I really liked is when I formed the band Even and Blackouts, the idea is that was kind of like that, like get away from what I.
Oh, that's your band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yes.
Yeah,
now I know.
Yeah,
I've heard you guys. Yes, I dig it.
Yeah. So Weasel kind of not restricted me, but it became more like this specific sound. And then when I did Even and Blackouts, I want to break out of that. But one of the things I learned from being in theater or improvisation was that every record I would bring in a different instrument or something and say, like there's one album I brought in a ukulele and I said, we have to use this at least 3 times, but not as a ukulele.
Right.
So one time we used it, we call it the drumalele. We actually, my drummer drummed on it and we did it that way. And then we did one where we turn the strings up and down to get a sound. So a band can become, not in a bad way, but restrictive in good ways in sometimes, because you're trying to create something that appeals to an audience, but also the people internal. And then it's nice to have that little offshoot where you Your discovery is unhampered, you know.
when you're in a band for a long time, okay, so let me tie Naked Raygun into this, okay?
Okay, here
so
we go.
you start finding, and let's just roll with this discovery thing, okay?
Yeah.
You start finding landmarks, right? Because as a player, as a musician, as an artist, or a writer or whatnot, let's just say as an artist, you start going to museums, right? You start looking at art books, you start doing workshops maybe, right? Or, you're like, oh, I like oil painting, but maybe I should try sculpting, okay? All this kind of stuff. But you start finding like landmarks. What I mean by landmarks is you can say, in our world of how we're talking, you could say, no, I want to go a little bit more like Naked Raygun here, right? Or I want to go, what the fuck? I don't know, Pixies. I want, right? I want the guitars to be like Sick of It All, or I want them to be like Spoon. Okay, right? And so you start having these landmarks, which in art you'd be like, oh, like Monet or Keith Haring or whatever, and in writing you'd be like James Joyce. You want to tear your hair out trying to read this
or
thing.
Vonnegut, you want to be funny but philosophical.
Right. Or tragic or whatnot.
Yeah.
So you kind of form these landmarks in your band, because after a while you start figuring out, oh, this is what we're good at, and this is where we get excited. That these are the kind of ways we like to communicate. Or depending on your band, you might be, my band, the guys grew up listening to what they listened to, right? Another band might be different, right? So your landmarks might be different. Meshuggah would never be a landmark band for us. We don't play anything like that, right? But you could say, no, I want straight ahead rock and roll. And they'll be like Bob Seger? And you go, no, like Naked Raygun. Right? I want to get angular and kind of weird on this. And that might be like Jawbox. And you go, well, it might be more like Helmet or more like Fugazi. But there become these landmarks where the band can just reference what in the hell you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I used to have a bad impression of that, because there was that movie. I bring it up a couple times. I forgot the name of it now, but the movie begins with two people pitching their film, and it's like a graduate meets something,
Right. Oh, yeah.
Hello, John in the future here, and the movie I was talking about was called The Player, released in 1992, starring Tim Robbins. There's a long, famous opening scene, and it does mention The Graduate, but the part I was actually talking about starts here.
Political doesn't scare me. Radical political scares me. Political scares
politely, politically radical, but
it's funny.
It's funny. It's
a funny political thing.
It's a funny, it's a thriller too.
It's a thriller,
and it's all at once.
So, what's the story?
It's a story about a senator, a bad guy senator at first. And he's traveling around the country on the country's dime, like that Sununu guy used to.
I see. So, sort of a cynical political thriller comedy.
Yeah, but it's got a heart in the right spot. And anyway, he has an accident.
An accident?
And he becomes clairvoyant, like a psychic.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a psychic political thriller comedy with a heart.
With a heart. And not unlike Ghost meets Manchurian Candidate.
Which is the worst way to go about it.
Yeah, but it used to sit bad with me. But you're kind of talking about a little bit of that we actually do that. We make references to things to help other people understand where we're going.
I think it's kind of terrible to sit down and say, I want to write something like this.
Yeah.
As far as a writing practice, I don't think it's a terrible thing to do. I think people should do whatever the hell they want to do, right? Especially artistically, and as far as practice, like learning how to do things, right? Like one of the best ways to learn song structure ideas is by learning different songs. And then you realize, wow, I always thought this was 4/4, but there's this weird 3/4 measure built into this.
Yeah.
You know,
I learned that about We Can Work It Out by the Beatles has that. It goes to 3/4 during that one section. It blew my mind.
I mean, there's so many songs where when you listen to them, your head just keeps bobbing, so you don't necessarily notice how well written it was.
Mhm.
So it's a great thing to when you find a song you really like, sit down and learn it. You know, what is it that you like about it? Is it the chord structure, or is it what the vocals do on top? Is it what the rhythm section does below it? I think that's great, but I do tend to think that the better way for songwriting is to get off your boat, start walking around the beach, and say, hey guys, look what I found. Because you're not the first person to write an A minor F chord progression. Like, they work together on their own. They don't need you to approve of them. Those two chords sound good together. And a C works really well with it. And a G works really well with it. And there's lots of chord progressions that sound good. But the more you keep learning how other people have looked, oh shit, I never thought to look at the underneath of it. And then you can start finding other things. But you do have to shed your ego to do that. Because if you walk into the practice room and you say, this is my little baby and it's perfect, and all I want you to do is play what I tell you to play, you're never going to learn anything. You might end up with a great song, don't get me wrong. But I also think you got these people in the room for a reason, so show some respect.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like that's the wily beast of art, is that you can, even the approach we're saying we don't like, you can still become very well known and popular being an egomaniac with a song.
You can still do great stuff, but chances are, if you're going to do that, you have to know who your band is and prepare things for them that make all of you be better. All right. Like Prince did a great job of that. Okay. Lots of people have been able to run a whole band and do great at it. I mean, honestly, it's no different than like Little League baseball. You don't want to put the person in a position to fail. We all have a spot on the team. The kids in the outfield, they should be fast because they got to run. And the kids in the infield, they should be quick. But we all have to work together. And you put people in the different positions to work on that song. Like I said, Prince did that, or Quincy Jones would do that, right? He could oversee a whole band. For me, I'm not that guy. I'm a rock and roller. So I rely on my brothers to help me find, and I help them find, what is the cool thing about this song that we're working.
I just can't seem to get away. There's no such thing as escaping from the silence. You're always in the sense they're clutching to another side. I've never taken anything, you just stop a second. And it's constantly repeated through the day. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Through the day. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah.
To me, that's a key to why your band hasn't changed members so much over how many years? 30? I don't know how many years you're at now.
Next year will be 30.
Yeah, that you basically have kept. Whereas in like Weasel, we're dealing with someone who has a little bit of an ego. That we had over like 16 members from my 20 years forming the band. You know, so
Yeah.
we're different beasts we work with.
But part of that was just how our band was formed. Okay, so when I was 14, a bunch of like guys like out of high school, mostly like 10 years older than me, they found out that I played guitar and they were starting a band, and I was a 14-year-old fucking kid. And they said, hey, we heard you play guitar. Do you want to play bass in our band? And all I knew was that I wanted to play music.
Johnny's got a problem and he's out of control.
Hello, and welcome to the middle of the show, where I get to talk about our sponsor, HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Hey, when you need a dinner fast, You don't have to call for delivery. You could think about HelloFresh. Their fast and fresh recipes are ready in just 15 minutes or less. Plus, HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout. If you're not familiar with this, HelloFresh wants you to have it all: free time and fresh, tasty food. That's why they take care of the meal planning and deliver the ingredients. So everything you need to whip up a delicious meal arrives right to your door. I'm in Japan right now, so I can't take advantage of this, but I did tell my sister about it, and luckily for me, she gets a little bit of a discount, thankful to HelloFresh. But if I were using it, what I would be interested in is how it would affect how I use spices. Over the pandemic, I got a little better at being a little bit more adventurous at understanding spices and what to use in different cases. I'm still learning a lot about it, but the cool thing about HelloFresh is they give you pre-proportioned ingredients and they help cut down on food waste, while step-by-step instructions make cooking a breeze. My sister finally got to use it and said to me, quote, "My son Levi loved the meals we made. I've also started cooking my rice different 'cause of HelloFresh," unquote. She seems very excited about it. She was already a very good cook, and I'm excited to get home and try some of her ideas that were based on maybe some of the recipes she got from HelloFresh. So if you are interested, go to hellofresh.com/Jughead50 and use code Jughead50 for 50% off plus free shipping. I'll say that one more time. Go to hellofresh.com/Jughead50 and use code Jughead50 for 50% off plus free shipping. And now back to Chris and me.
Johnny's got a problem and he's out of control.
We did years of shows through, I guess, my early part of high school. At the end of high school, that band broke up, but some of us kept playing. New people came in, and one of these guys almost became like a mentor for me. He wasn't that much older than me, but as a songwriter, just had really a kind of carefree way of working that I really admired. And he moved up to Gainesville because he was a little older than me. He was already out of high school. I would come up on weekends and 2.5, 3-hour drive. But I'd come up during the summer or on breaks, and we'd write songs and stuff. And we really had a good camaraderie. Then I got out of high school, and he came back in the summer, and he said, "Hey, I'm back for the summer, visiting my folks. Let's get together and write." And I found a bass player. And that bass player was Jason Black.
John in the future, if you're not so familiar with the formation and lineup of Hot Water Music, I'll introduce that right now because Chris jettisons himself into giving me the origin story of Hot Water Music. The band consisted pretty much through their almost 30 years with Chuck Raygun, Chris Wollard, Jason Black, and George Rabello. Chris Cresswell joined in 2017.
So I got together with them in Jason Black's mom's garage with no drummer at all, right? And we just like kind of played some songs together and just talked about like what music we were into. And I said, "Hey man, I think you're friends with a friend of mine, Dave Malinsky, Spinach." And he was like, "Yeah, I go to school with him." And I was like, "I thought so." And so that summer, I mean, we just kept writing every day, right? And we kind of started a new band. I think we tried out like 8 or 9 drummers. They were all metalheads. Back then, like Tampa area was Morbid Angel and Deicide and Cannibal Corpse and Death. And it was a big metal scene, right? So all the drummers were metal drummers, and none of them worked because we were playing some sort of melodic punk rock. And that lasted for a month or two. And then Jason said, "Well, I do have this one guy that I grew up playing with." They went to a performing arts school, so they'd spend half their days at this school. And he said, "Well, I know this guy. We grew up playing jazz together in the jazz band." And so me and Zach, it was Zach, the other guitar player and the singer, we said, "Okay, let's check him out." And so we were, there was this one ghetto facility of like all the bands practiced in this storage lot. And I pull up and I get out of the car and I look, and George is sitting behind the drum stool and his hair is down to his ass. I'm sure you've seen that movie, The Usual Suspects.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He looked like fucking Kaiser Soze. Okay? Like just long flowing hair all the way, full-blooded Portuguese, just all the way down to his hair, sitting behind a drums, big drum set, all these fucking drums. And I went, God damn it. Another fucking metal drummer. Fuck. And I don't mean to talk shit about metal drummers. It's just that wasn't what we were wanting to do.
Right.
So here I am getting out of my van, and I got like a long sleeve t-shirt from the straight edge band called Instead. And George is looking at me and he goes, son of a bitch, another straight edge guitar player. Right? So we kind of hated each other as soon as we saw each other. But once the three of us started playing together, it really worked. It really, really worked because Jason and George already had this wealth of knowledge of how to play together. And all I really had to do was kind of come up with a melody, but then kind of follow them, which took me a lot of years to realize that was actually my job. Then we said, okay, yeah, George, we want you to join the fucking band. Like, this is going really good. Like, all these guys lived in the next town over from me, so that I didn't really know them. I met Jason 3 weeks before I met George. I met George maybe 1 week before I met Chuck, right? But George and Chuck lived together, and they had their own band. We just kind of kept playing through the summer. And then at the end of the summer, when school started again, my guitar player was going back up to Gainesville, and Jason was going back up to Gainesville. So I said, well, fuck it. I've been planning to move to Gainesville also, so I'm just going to move up. And then George said, well, shit, I don't know anybody up there, but I'll move up there. So George came because he was in the band. But Chuck was also in George's band. So then Chuck moved up as well. And then their singer moved up as well, right? So 2 bands moved up at the same time. And my wife included. My wife was Jason's roommate back then. And so we showed up with this crew of like 8 or 10 people or something. And we didn't know anybody else in town. So we just got really close. We all just hung out all the time. We really didn't care whose band we were working on a song for. We were just playing music together. Ended up that because of that, we kind of just formed this real bond between the 4 of us. We wrote a song called Us and Chuck. Because we thought, let's write a song for our band with Chuck, and let's try to get Chuck to be the second guitar player of our band.
Yeah.
And our singer will become just the singer. But both bands kind of just fell apart at that point. And it just became obvious, I think, that the 4 of us had, there was just this weird musical connection where we all liked a lot of different kinds of music, and we all kind of liked the same different kinds of music. And we could communicate really well about this stuff. Jason and George, the rhythm section, they were coming from a more technical standpoint, but that made me and Chuck have to approach everything from more of a traditional songwriting standpoint to be, okay, I'm writing this song, but there's still enough room for us to play it a million different ways. So we can still find our own way to attack it.
Yeah, I like that. A sidetrack story when Gub Conway, who started the band Gage, is in even in Blackouts, and
Absolutely.
what our drummer, his name is Bice, and our bassist at the time was Phil Hill from Teen Idols, and lots of queers. But they said their job was to try to understand what me and Gub were doing, because Gub and I aren't trained at all. So I thought that was really interesting. So I was actually freed more to bring in stuff that I thought was weird because I don't know what key it's in or what tempo it is. And then their job was to try to understand it and bring it into a form it. I thought that's an interesting way of working.
It is. And that's where this becomes more discovery than creativity, because the rhythm section, they can talk in more classical terms of what these ideas actually are.
Yeah.
But to me, it liberates me, even though they're so far ahead of me as far as their understanding of what's actually happening. It does allow me to kind of write in a way where I really don't have to worry.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I feel the same way. Yeah.
Even the boss has a serious fucking band sitting
Well,
behind
yeah,
him.
he's got some very serious players in this.
You know what
band.
I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't know who there is anymore. There's been so few people. Like, that's why I said Prince earlier. There are so few people that they go, I know what this song is from beginning to end on every instrument. Even the boss surrounds himself with people that contribute.
Well, Chris, I was worried we wouldn't even be able to get an hour in because I didn't know you. I mean, we know
You don't know me at all, dude.
We come from the same world, but a little bit.
You don't know me at all.
I don't know you.
I'll tear this thing into. We'll be talking to 11. What was it? 9:16. I give you another 2-3 hours. What do you need?
I'm really, this actually makes me think that I probably will have another one with you where I am a little bit more pushing us in other directions, because I already have to go soon, but I still want to talk about the Naked Raygun stuff because we have to go there. But you're actually taking in the directions that I love going, where it's more like, I don't know, philosophical looks at music instead of just facts. That's
what I said when we first started talking, right? Isn't that what I said?
Yeah. And that's the way I roll too. So
we're going to end up just rolling. We're just going to end up rolling.
I do have to get us talking a little bit about the tribute album, but I'd like to do it in a more interesting way, because you have a quote in that press release, and this maybe might touch on a little bit of that. Because it says, Naked Raygun are one of the bands that became a permanent landmark in how we, as a band, see and approach the music we play. I thought, like you picking apart like what the word create compared to discover, I was picking apart these words see and approach, because I thought those are interesting ways. Like what? Because you don't sound like Naked Raygun, Hot Water Music.
I disagree.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's why I feel like that a word approach is a little bit weighted word, because it seems like you use some of their influences to approach something in some way, and then it goes some other direction. But yes. Can you further explain that to me? How you see that?
Okay, so right, Naked Raygun is obviously a punk rock band, and I guess I got to talk about genres.
Yeah. Well, if you throw my favorite record, Throb Throb, into there, it confuses it, because that's more like an experimental.
I agree. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. But the first song's kind of a straight ahead rocker.
Rat Patrol.
Then the band allows themselves to completely abandon what would maybe be called punk rock formula.
Yeah, I did a podcast on Throb Throb, and I interviewed everybody who was in the band at that time, and we talked about how Camilo Gonzalez is one of the reasons it was kind of artsy, because he went to art school.
I guess you could say some of our guys went to art school too. I'd just call it music school. Okay, so I mean, I'm 47, I'm about to turn 48, right? In middle school, this was late 80s. I'm getting into punk rock. I hear the Misfits, they're already broke up. I hear Minor Threat, they're already broke up. I hear 7 Seconds, they're still together. I hear Dag Nasty, that's a slight deviation on Minor Threat.
DRI sort of switched gears.
DRI, okay, yeah, DRI, GBH. These are some of the first bands I'm hearing, DRI was still together, GBH was still together, Circle Jerks were still together, but we're like 3 albums away from Group Sex,
They're doing Wonderful, which
right,
not so wonderful.
exactly, right, which is wonderful, yeah. But all of a sudden, there's this band I'm hearing. It's about at the same time as I was finding out about probably like Government Issue, Gray Matter, Naked Raygun, where this is more East Coast, Midwest, not, I guess I probably didn't even know it back then, but there was some like rock and roll to this, like Government Issue, the U album, a lot of Government Issue, a lot Gray Matter and the 3 album and Naked Raygun. I'm hearing like these awesome, just rock and roll songs. And then the bands are willing to just kind of go off into whatever. Like the first Naked Raygun, the first album I heard was Jettison, and they put out a 7-inch for Vanilla Blue. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is this? Like, what is this almost kind of surf rock intro? And then it goes into this like just wonderful, straightforward kind of punk, like rock and roll song. And I guess that kind of probably got me into Agent Orange a little bit, DRI, Dealing With It. I love that record. I still have that record. I might as well get a tattoo for that record because of how many times I've listened to that record. I love that fucking record. But I've never written like that. I've never felt like writing like that. It speaks to me immensely, but I never was compelled to write like that. I probably played guitar for 7 years before I learned what a bar chord was. I was just playing like regular chords and stuff. Like the stuff I was learning didn't have this. And so when I got into punk rock, and that was through skateboarding, I loved the aggression of a lot of the stuff. But when I was learning it, some of it was pretty simple, and I love the vibe of it. But it was the stuff like Naked Raygun, Gray Matter, Sam I Am a little later on, where the guitars and vocals were going in, what seemed to me really experimental directions.
Even lyrically, too, they're just all over the place.
Well,
like,
yeah. Okay, so, I was just about to say, on the newest, a year ago or a year and a half ago, the Overlords record, Jeff wrote a song that has 3 lines. It's probably like 3.5 or 4 minutes long, but there's 3 lines lyrically, and it captivates me because he's saying a lot with 3 lines. Jeff is the one I know the best, and he's been a wonderful supporter of what we do for years. Would always show up at the show with family, and we would sit for the whole show and talk. I'd almost forget the show was going, right? Just a really interested, caring family and person. But when they put that album out, and I'd be like, this song's really great. He'd be like, oh, I wrote that one. And I'd be like, and this song's great. He'd be like, oh, no, he wrote this one. He was just as excited about the songs that his bandmates wrote.
Yeah, there's one that Spicer wrote that I really love, and I thought it was Jeff, and he was just excited to say, no, that was that was Eric.
Is that I think he wrote the somehow
that's one. Is it? I'm looking at, I think is that Broken Things, I think, or something?
The Broken Things.
Yeah, I love that song.
That's an amazing song. And Jeff was just as excited about that song as he was his songs. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that like maybe we've learned to embrace as well in our band. Look, we want all of each other to be always exploring whatever music we're into at the time, because there's things to learn. That's the wonderful thing about a great band. They learn to communicate and can play these different vibes and different song ideas and different chord progressions, and not worry about whether the crowd thinks it's punk or whether the crowd thinks it's tough. No, this is how we hear it, and we're going to go that way. This is what makes us excited. These are the discoveries of this chord progression and this rhythm pattern. These are the things that get us excited. You know, there weren't that many bands that really had the balls to do weird shit.
This is, once again, I'm seeing it from my own perception and narrow view of all the history of music, but I do feel like there's different points in punk, if you under that category, that had this freeing thing going, and then it gets really restricted again. Like I think Green Day into the mainstream's kind of restricted it again, whereas before that it was our punk shows in the 80s and were just like a handbag of bizarre bands, like piano players.
It'd be a metal band playing with punk band, a hardcore band, and and in the early days, that's how we actually arranged our tours on purpose. Yeah. It was, let's get different bands, go on tour, and if you guys can bring 10 guys and right, like then we have 20 people, right? And, well, our first van was my van. Our second van we bought with Assuck, the grindcore band. Right? They bought a van for $600. We put $600 of engine work into it, and they would go on tour, and I would roadie for them, and then they'd come back, and then we would go on tour, and their guitar player would roadie for us, and we just split this van.
Yeah.
Who cares what the different bands you play with sound like? You more care about building that community. When we come back up here, we're playing with you. And when you come down to Florida, you're playing with us. And we'll set the show up here and you set the show up there. And, but that was pre-internet days, right? So everything was built on face-to-face friendships. And it just didn't matter if your band sounded like a Lookout Records band or a DC Records band or a Victory Records band, especially from where we are, in Florida. I bet you if you go on social media right now and look at every band on tour, none of them are coming to Florida. None of them are coming to Florida. They come down to Georgia and then they take off. And that's the way it's always been. So it forged this thing down here where all we have is each other. So the punk rock shows, it's not 3 pop punk bands. It's 3 bands that sound completely different, probably.
I think that's a magical thing of areas like that. I thought Houston used to be like that at this place called the Axiom.
Texas is kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Where all these different bands, whenever we played there with Weasel, it was always like, the crowd was always like gothics and punks and like rockers and metal.
Completely like bizarro, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's different, right? Yeah. And that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to there might be an acoustic guy opening up for a metal band. Who the fuck knows, but the community's trying to just, Gainesville's kind of weird that way, and there was a few kind of big bands back in the day that got kind of pissed off about it. They just didn't understand that people in Gainesville back in the old days, it was so much about supporting the local bands that when some of these bigger bands would come through, we'd put them in the middle slot. We'd say, look, everybody's going to stay until Radon finishes playing, the local band, or Spoke, or Hot Water, or Against Me. But nobody knows you here because nobody ever comes here. So if you want to play to the most people, you should probably play in the middle of the show. That's when most people are going to be here. If you play it after all the local bands, chances are half the people are going to leave, you know, and people would just be like, no, we're the headlining band, or we don't understand what you're talking about. And we just say, there's only going to be 50 people anyway. You know, do you want to play to all 50 of them?
Then here's where you play. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I understand that. It's weird because one of the things that me and Ben did with Weasel is kind of against that, but not at the same time, because we were so small. It was a ridiculous thing to say, but we had said that we would only headline when we were a nothing band, and you know, touring was already difficult. We put that other added thing on top of us that we would always, because we go to these shows and no one would show up for like the opening bands. It was depressing. So we had said, but only headline.
We were showing up in towns where quite literally whoever the fuck the promoter was we were talking to wasn't there. And we'd show up at like a house show and people would say, well, who the fuck are you? Why are you here? Like, I remember on our first tour, we went up and played, was it Minneapolis or something? We left Chicago and went up and played Minneapolis. But we got to this house and Captain Jazz was playing, a couple other bands were playing. I don't know, there was a house show band, you know, a bunch of bands playing barbecue in the backyard, right? And we showed up. They said, who the fuck are you? You know, and we said, well, we're from Florida. And they said, well, you're not playing here today. And we said, well, evidently there's been a misunderstanding and blah, blah, blah. And they said, okay. You know, and it's kind of funny because it was a basement of a house and they were acting like it was a club. But they said, well, the show starts at whatever. Let me make up a number. Show starts at 6:00. So you guys can play here at 5:30 and there'll probably be some people here, you know. And we had just driven fucking hours. We're not going to get paid. We're not going to sell anything because there's nobody there. So, you know, really, we don't have a place to stay. So really, you know, today cost us $200 and we made, $50 yesterday, right? So we played the most gnarly 20-minute set. We played as intensely as we could play, the most impactful 20 minutes that we could do. And then we left.
Yeah.
And we just hoped that we made an impact.
One more thing I'll say about that, Chris, and then I have to ask one question about Naked Raygun, and then I have to go. But I remember one of the why I still hold to a lot of memories of me and Ben, even though we don't get along anymore and shit has happened in years, was that we always consider ourselves the underdog, you know, an underdog band. And that was kind of like the driving force. The other thing was playing harder and faster than we're capable was kind of our rule too.
Us too.
And I really love that idea that I know it's just a point of pride that I have still, that we would play our hearts out at shows that nobody was at, you know. And I thought that was important.
Yeah, or play your hearts out at shows where they didn't want you.
Yeah, really, yeah, exactly.
Because that really would get me going.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, me too. Yeah,
like when we opened for Sick of It All in Dallas, Texas, and there was a bunch of fucking hammer skins in the crowd, and they tried to keep me. Check it out, man. They stood at the entrance of the door and tried to tell me our band wasn't allowed inside. And I stood there and said to all these dudes that wanted to beat my ass, I don't know why they didn't, but I said, look, the band you want to see hired us to open the show. So you can't see the band you want to see until we play. So just let me in. We're going to play a half an hour and we're going to get the fuck off the stage. I mean, I don't know how many shows where I've been like, dude, we are in the wrong spot.
Yeah, we had a bill in Connecticut where we were between Gorilla Biscuits and Judge.
Who booked that? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like one of our old tours. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
and
Like,
back then they were doing this like monkey dance where they like punch towards the ground. Do you remember that sort of?
oh, we always called that picking up change.
I just like punching the ground. I just picking up change.
Picking up change, man. Picking up change.
Chris, I got to ask one more thing just to bring it back around to Naked Raygun, and then I'll go. And then I guarantee you we're going to have another discussion because I really want to dig into more of how your mind is working. So, but I have to go.
Yeah, of course. No worries.
Yeah. So I need a little bit of nuts and bolts. Like, was there a choice on your parts to do Wonder Beer? Was that were they giving you the catalog and you chose what you wanted, and who chose?
No, well, I guess they kind of probably did give us the catalog. They didn't really, well, no. They told us some other bands had done some stuff, but didn't tell us what. Now, probably 25 years ago, long time ago, we used to cover Soldier's Requiem. And then later on, when we were doing the band The Draft, we did Wonder Bear. Here's the thing. So Soldier's Requiem, I would always get confused about the arrangement. And we played it, I don't know however many times, but I would always get confused about, is this where this whoa-whoa starts or that whoa-whoa? Or is this where the right? Is it that part, right? I would just get confused. And later on, when I was doing Wonder Beer, I was just like, this song makes so much sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But on a personal note, so the Draft went and played Chicago at the Metro, right? And Pizzotti came out, and I was like, well, fuck, I'm going to play Wonder Beer tonight, right? And we played it, and I forgot about half the lyrics. Right? Seriously, the first half of this verse became, just like the third verse. It was now the second verse, and everything was fucked up. But, Jeff was there, and I was like, in the middle of the song, I was like panicking. I was like, oh my God, I'm blowing it, right? And, we finished the show and came backstage and talking to Jeff, and he was like, wow, I can't believe you did that or something, and I said, man, I am so sorry. I couldn't get your lyrics straight, even though I've done this a bunch of times. And then he said, oh, that's fine. I've never got them straight either on that song.
Well, they're highly poetic, and like I was even trying
to so poetic. Right?
Yeah, you could switch parts so pretty easily, probably.
it's way more detailed than what you think when you're just hearing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then when we started talking about actually recording a cover, that I guess just became kind of, to me, the one that I had the most real relationship, I guess, with them, because it was just kind of a funny moment. I pushed for Rat Patrol. I did. We talked about Soldier's Requiem. No, I love the carefree attitude of Wonder Beer, where it's not the most serious song, but it's really well written.
Yeah, it's not a serious song, but it's playing with these like references to gods and mythology. It's like very elusive. Yeah. It's not just like your regular party song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, just to me that just felt like the right one for us. I kind of think that's probably, like the first time we played with Haggerty and Pierre was when we opened up for Pegboy, right? And we were just like this local kind of weird rock band that didn't fit in anywhere. And those guys were nice as shit. They were so nice. Like they cared about our band, right? And they talked to us. And then later when we started meeting them, as, because obviously there's many years in between, as the Naked Raygun guys, it was just, I guess, there's a whole thing of, they say, be careful meeting your heroes. I've met a lot of heroes that are no longer my heroes because I met them. And that band is the exact opposite. I just think of them these are good guys that care about writing music, and they're experimenting and they're exploring different things, and they really don't give a fuck what you think. There's going to be the biggest sing-along you've ever heard right next to a song that is the opposite of a sing-along, where fucking, like I said, where Jeff Bezzotti can take 3 lines, right? I am not your suicide bomb. What's the next line?
I will not be your suicide bomb. Someday you'll atone for your sins, and even God won't let you in.
And that's the whole song.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, you tell me, does that sound like somebody that mailed in those lyrics? They didn't phone that shit in.
No.
He thought about that. He thought about that a lot.
I will not be your suicide bomb. I will not be your suicide.
It's not a haiku, but it's almost like a haiku, right? Like he's saying a lot with very few words.
I interviewed him last year at his house, and he had like the old-fashioned recording devices where he had himself singing it many different ways over, like every song, like all different ways. And he was like passionate about showing me these different versions, asking like, what do you think about this compared to that? I was very impressed by that attention to detail.
It is. And he'll send me sometimes like demos or solo things he's doing. And this is not somebody trying to make a pop song. This is somebody making art, and they're making art from their viewpoint. When all of those guys get together and they combine their viewpoints, that's one of the few bands that we could see growing up that did that kind of showed us that, maybe we should allow ourselves to play the different music that all 4 of us want to play. I guess it's about approaching things you're not, just because you don't know it doesn't mean it's bad. You should maybe approach it with curiosity instead of judgment, I guess.
I have to go, but one of the last things I'll respond to that is that when I often think about and ask questions about the relationship an artist to an audience, like how does that is it always fuck you, or is it like attention to what they're listening to? But what you said made me think about that. What I had learned to think about, and I learned this more in theater than in music right away, is that it's not always trying to please the audience but you also want to give them things that they didn't know that they would like. And you're hoping that they're open to that idea, that experience of realizing that they like something they wouldn't have known they liked.
I firmly believe that is almost about the only way to have art progress.
Agreed.
Now, those are usually baby steps. Honestly, the world's full of great examples of you're listening to a song, so all of a sudden the breakdown is different. Obviously, I guess Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel would be great examples of how to take what one might consider a pop song, but approach it from a completely different angle. But you have to be a student as well as a teacher to do any of this stuff. If I read Hemingway now, it's different than when I read it when I was 20. That's a different book. Sorry. I read the same book, but it reads completely different. 20 years of my life makes this book read different. 20 years of experience makes me hear this record different.
Exactly, yeah.
20 years of experience makes me see this painting different.
Well, we bring our own experiences to everything we
Right.
see,
And
whether we know it or not. Yeah.
Experience changes the narrative
perception of it,
almost. Yeah, the whole perception.
Yeah. Chris, I gotta go.
Right.
I really enjoyed talking to you. I had no idea what to expect.
I can tell you hated this conversation.
No.
You've been nothing but an asshole the whole time.
Well, yeah.
I don't care that you're in Japan. You've been a jerk the entire.
Thank you. I need that. I need that to feed my soul. I need that hate.
Yeah, to remind you of America.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me. Old man sitting on his porch, telling people to get off his lawn.
It's dark now. It was sunny when we started.
All right, Chris. I have to.
Well, hey, man. If you do want to reach out again, don't hesitate. And it's been good talking to you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I love these types of conversations. So thank you.
Well, they're rewarding on my end as well.
Great. All right, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Be good, brother.
Bye.
All the rest of the pieces will
If you have made it this far, you just got done listening to New Eyes Open by The Draft off their record In a Million Pieces, released in 2006. Thank you, everybody, for listening to that delicious conversation between me and Chris. Upcoming, we will have Simon Lamb from Dan Vapid and the Cheats and Screeching Weasel and the Ritalins, I think was his first band out of Scotland. I'm looking forward to that. Simon has been a good friend of mine since I met him in Edinburgh, probably in like 1995 or something around that. It's been quite a long time. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. I would also like to remind you to check out and pre-order or order, depending on where you are in history, the tribute to Naked Raygun, where 100% will be donated to the family of Pierre Kezdy. You can buy shirts and vinyl or download the digital, and I'm sure there will be videos popping up here and there. Other than that, you can also help me out by donating to the Patreon. I really could use your help. You could do it for a couple of months, or you could stay for a full year and press further buttons that allows you to sign up for a full year in advance. That really helps me out a lot. And once again, if you can't do that, I really understand, but I would please ask you to go and write a review at Apple Music or wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can also subscribe to me on YouTube or at Podomatic. Anything that can help will help. That's obvious to say and obvious in meaning, but difficult to actually pursue. That's it, everybody. Thank you.